After watching a few beginner guides for Hero Siege, I realized that most of them are actually made by veteran players, who tend to skip over the basics. It's like they assume you already know how everything works, which can be really confusing if you're just starting out. So in this guide, I want to walk you through a real beginner-friendly experience that actually covers the simple stuff, things that will help you get started, level up, and eventually max out your first character. So let's dive into it. When you launch the game for the first time, you will see two main options. You can either play locally or online. If you choose to play locally, your characters and progress are safely stored without needing an internet connection. Depending on your Steam settings, your saves are either saved to the Steam cloud or just locally on your computer. What's also really cool is that the game supports split screen, so you can play with someone next to you, or you can even invite a friend to join you via remote play and split screen together online. But chances are you're here because you want to play online. To do that, you will need to register an account and pick a login region. After you log in, you will get access to 21 character slots. Right now, there are 22 different classes available in the game, if you include the DLC characters. And there is one more class coming soon, so you won't have a slot for every single one. But don't worry, you can always buy more slots later on. Realistically though, 21 slots will last you a long time, because you will probably end up focusing on just a few characters anyway. When you click on an empty slot, you will go to the character creation screen. Here you can check out each class's attacks and skills. That helps you to get a feel for what kind of playstyle they offer. But if you want to be extra sure that you will enjoy playing a certain class, I recommend watching some gameplay or build guides for them first. It's worth the time, especially since you will be investing a lot of hours into whichever character you pick. Now, before you actually create your character, you will have to make an important decision. You can choose whether you want to play in hardcore mode. That means if you die, your character is gone forever. Personally, I wouldn't recommend hardcore for anyone new to the game. It's just too punishing when you are still learning. Then there is seasonal mode, which is where most players hang out. In seasonal, everyone starts fresh and competes in rankings and ladders. And lastly, there is Odyssey mode. That's a solo self-found mode, which means you cannot play with others and you can trade or use the auction house. You can technically choose all three options at once, or none of them, if you just want to make a regular off-season character. But if this is your first time playing, I would suggest sticking with a regular seasonal character. Seasons usually last around 2 to 3 months. When the season ends, your seasonal character gets transferred to the non-seasonal pool, and they keep all the loot and gold. But here is a little bonus tip that a lot of people miss. Only the stuff stored in your character's tabs and your personal stash will be transferred. Anything you leave in the shared stash of a seasonal character gets deleted at the end of a season. I found that out the hard way, so avoid the same mistake. After you have created your character, you will have the option to choose some cosmetic items. But you can skip that for now and just jump into the game. The next step is to create a game. Head down here to the bottom and create a new session. Pick your server, your name and a password if you want to keep random players out. And that's it. Also, a good thing to know is that your characters aren't locked to any specific server. So if you start on one and later want to switch to a different server, you are totally free to do that. Now you will be greeted with a tutorial, where it goes over the basics on how to spend your first skill and attribute points, how to jump and so on. By the way, you move your character either by WASD or by mouse click. You can use either one or both at the same time for better control. After you finish the tutorial, you will find yourself in the first town. Here you can pick up a few quests and I highly recommend that you do so. They offer some great rewards with very little effort, and they are also a nice way to learn some of the game's basics, like how to mine. But before we dive any deeper into the gameplay, let's take a moment to look at the interface and understand what everything means. When you open your character screen, you will notice a variety of item slots. There is a slot for your head, chest, belt, gloves, and boots. You also have an amulet slot, 2 slots for rings, a weapon, and an offense slot. On top of that, there are 4 slots for potions and a bunch of slots for charms. Charms work kind of like bonus items that provide all sorts of useful stat increases or passive effects. On the left side of the window, you will see slots for relics. Those are special items you can find throughout the game, and they offer additional stats or active abilities. Choosing the right relics for your class and build can make a big difference in how well you perform in combat. You can only collect 4 of them at a time. And the more often you find the same relic, the higher the stat increases get, maxing out at level 10. Towards the bottom of the inventory screen, you will find a tab for gems and runes. These are socketable items that give your gear more power and are used to create runewords, but more on that later. Then there is also a tab for your materials and one for the different keys you collect. You can sort your inventory tab by pressing this button, and if you have a mercenary, the first one of which you can find here, then you can access his menu by pressing this button and equip items on him here. As for your keyboard setup, potions are bound to key 1 to 4 by default. Other keys and actions are bound to letters or mouse buttons. You can and should customize your keybinds in the settings menu. I highly recommend doing this because depending on the class you are playing, you might have a lot of skills to juggle. To bind the skill to any of the buttons, just press on an existing one. To open up the menu, now click on the letter you want to assign it to and on the skill. And there you have it. In the upper left corner of the screen, you will see your character's portrait along with your health and mana bars. Underneath it is your character's level in white and the hero level in blue. And on the right side is the minimap, which you can expand by pressing M. Here you can zoom in and out with your mouse wheel. Another quick way to open the map is by pressing Tab. Plus, you can also tweak how the map looks and behaves by adjusting the settings under the gameplay option in the main menu. Right beneath the minimap is your quest tracker. It shows your current objectives. If it's taking up too much space, you can use the plus and minus buttons to show or collapse it. There are also 2 features I strongly suggest enabling. One is the DPS counter, which helps you see if your skill and gear choices are actually increasing your damage output. And the other one is the boss cooldown tracking, which tells you when bosses are about to unleash their next big attacks, which is super useful for dodging and planning your moves. Now, when you visit a map for the first time, your main priority should be to find the teleporter. As you get close to it, the fog of war around it will disappear and you will see a grayed out circle on your minimap. The same goes for the map's exit portal. The entrance portal will appear blue and the exit will be red. Once you get close enough to either one, it will show up clearly on your map. The exit is usually on the opposite side of where you started. Let's get back to the teleporter for a second. You have to unlock them first by pressing F when you get close. These things are super useful. You can teleport between any teleporters you have discovered, which makes navigating the world a whole lot easier. If you want to return back to town, just press V to summon your personal portal. From there, you can either go to any previously found teleporter or use the portal again to jump straight back to where you left off. One last thing, And this is really important. The game does not pause. So if you need to step away from your keyboard, make sure to use your portal to head back to town. That way, you won't get caught off guard or attacked while you are away. Looting in Hero Siege can be pretty annoying, especially when it comes to all the small stuff, like gold, ore, runes and keys. That's why you really shouldn't ignore the pet system. After you verify your email address, you will get a free pet that automatically picks up all those tiny drops for you, saving you a lot of hassle. You can equip your pets by going here. On top of that, verifying your email address also gives you access to the auction house, which is probably the most important feature for online play. Buying and selling gear there can save you hours of repetitive grinding. You will find the auction house in Act 3, in the first town. It has a lot of filters and options, so it's really worth learning how to use it well. I won't go into too much details here because that could be its own guide, but a good starting tip is to search for the name of the item you want and sort the results by price from lowest to highest. Back in the first area, aside from completing quests, your main goal should be leveling up to unlock some of your better skills. The early game can feel rough for many classes. It's honestly not much fun until you push through a bit. I think they should rework the early difficulty, because if I didn't know it gets better, I might have quit in the first hour. My recommendation is to grind up to level 16 before trying to take on the first boss. This allows you to have some of your better skills unlocked. Dungeons are the best place to do this, since they are packed with enemies. You can recognize a dungeon's entrance by this symbol on your map. And if you want to know the locations of every dungeon, I made a guide for that, so check it out. If you are having trouble staying alive or dealing enough damage, just keep farming the first dungeon, the Rat's Den, located on the outskirts of Inoya. You will pick up some decent loot, and once you hit level 16 and unlock more skill options, the game starts to feel a lot smoother. Here is a bonus tip. Dying while leveling will drain your experience bar. It won't reduce your actual level, but if the bar stays empty because you keep dying, you will stop gaining XP altogether. So it's smarter to run easier areas where you can constantly survive instead of wasting your time dying over and over again. Now let's talk about skills. The most important thing early on is to pick one main skill and dump as many points into it as possible. That's because the more points you put into a single skill, the more damage it does. Spreading your points across too many skills might seem fun, but it will leave you weak and enemies will take forever to kill. It's fine to put a point or two into helpful utility skills, like a mobility boost, but your main focus should stay on a single damage dealing skill. When you hover over a skill, you will see at the top what kind of elemental damage it does, also whether it benefits from attack or cast speed, and at the very bottom, it will show you which other skills boost its power. Once you have maxed out your main skill, start putting points into the supporting skills listed there, even if you're not using them directly. That's also why items with plus all skills are really powerful. They passively boost your main damage just by increasing all your skill levels. You will also see which attribute your skill scales with, and that should guide you how you spend your attribute points. If your skill scales with intelligence and you get 4 attribute points per level up, you should put 2 into intelligence and 2 into vitality. Always put half of your points into vitality, no matter what build you're going for. This could change later in the endgame, but it's the best approach for leveling. If your skill doesn't list any attribute, it's probably a physical melee or a ranged skill, which scales with strength. So in that case, put your points into strength instead. Dexterity is another option. It boosts your attack rating, which is the chance to hit your target, and critical damage, which is required for certain builds. But most of the time, you either choose strength or intelligence paired with vitality. Also, don't stress too much about messing up your build either. You can always reset your skills and attributes for a small fee. Plus, the game now lets you create different loadouts, where you could, for example, use one for AoE farming and one for bosses. Some skills also have a plus sign in the top right corner. That means that they have a sub-skill tree. These were added more recently and let you modify how the skill functions. The first few nodes are typically just regular stat boosts, but the big ones can completely change how the skill behaves. You can put 3 points in total into them, but you can only choose one at a time. You can't use several at once. You will unlock a point for the big nodes at level 60, 80 and at level 100. If you don't like how it feels after unlocking it, you can reset the sub-skill tree at any time for free. So don't be afraid to experiment until you find something that works well for your build. Once you hit level 100, you will unlock the hero level tree, which functions similar to Paragon levels in Diablo, where you continue to build your character by increasing base stats. It's also the only way to use glyphs, which can be socketed into specific parts of the tree. Let's now talk about some of the biggest reasons you might be getting randomly one-shotted in Hero Siege. And trust me, it's not just bad luck. Besides some enemies just hitting like a truck, it usually comes down to two things: AoE ground effects and corpse explosions. These are your worst enemies, and the best way to protect yourself? It's to stack up those resistances. If you have ever sat there wondering, why did I just instantly die? There is a good chance it was one of those two culprits. That's why resistances aren't just important, they are essential. In fact, getting enough resistances should be your #1 priority. Also, just like in other ARPGs, as you climb into higher difficulties, your resistances actually get reduced. That means you need to stack even more to stay alive. So whenever you find an item with plus all resistances on it, keep it. That kind of gear is absolute gold. Plus, there is also a really helpful rune that gives all resistances that can be slotted into any gear with an empty socket. It's not that rare or expensive either, so it is a super solid early investment in your survivability. Now, if you're playing a class that has resistance boosts built into their skill tree, like for example the Lancer or the Viking, you have got an easier time from the get-go. Aside from resistances, defense rating is another stat you don't want to sleep on. It affects how often enemies can even land a hit on you. The higher your defense, the less you get hit. Simple as that. And like I mentioned in the attribute section, always put about half of your attribute points into vitality while you are leveling. More health means more room for error and fewer instant deaths. There are also mechanics like block chance from shields, which can help reduce damage even more. But the biggest thing to focus on above everything else is keeping your resistances as close to the 75% cap as possible. Once you are sitting around that mark, the game gets a whole lot more forgiving. If you want to check what items are available in the game or craftable, open the menu by pressing escape and then click the small book icon. That will show you loads of information about the game, including all the non-random items and runewords. For runewords, you will need a grey item with the exact number of empty sockets the runeword requires. The white words are the name of the runes you need, and the grey words underneath are the items you can craft it on. For example, to make quickstep, you need grey boots with exactly 2 empty sockets. Then insert the correct runes in the same order how it is wrote here. If the order is wrong or the item has more sockets than required, the runeword won't work and you will just waste your materials. Also, while the requirement says 52 on the info screen, you can actually socket them into low tier grey items, making them usable on a much lower level character, which is perfect for leveling. Of course, when you are in the endgame, you want to get a high level grey base item. Some runewords are incredibly strong. Getting one of them early on can carry you through normal, nightmare and even hell 1 difficulty. especially if it's a weapon. Fully explaining how Runewords work would take an entire guide of its own, but those are the basics you need to get started. Now your main objective as you progress is to clear all the chapters. Once you defeat the final boss in Act 7 on normal, you will unlock Nightmare difficulty, which comes with harder enemies and better loot. Beating the final boss again in Nightmare difficulty unlocks Hell 1, and after beating him again on Hell 1, you will unlock Hell 2 and Hell 3. The great part is that any portals you unlocked in Hell 1 are now available in all Hell difficulties, including Hell 3, so you can jump right to the final boss in Hell 3 if you think your damage is high enough, and if you manage to beat him, you will unlock Hell 4 and Hell 5, along with the access to Satanic Zones. These zones have special modifiers that can boost your farming efficiency for loot and relics. They are one of the main methods for farming in the late game. If you ever want to reset a map, you don't need to quit the game, just open the menu and press Vote Reset. Now you should have a good idea of how to progress in Hero Siege. There is still a ton more I could share, but I will save that for another video. I hope this guide helped you out, and if you want more content on Hero Siege, let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next one.